beyond 8 o'clock. And that is so because, as you can see, the suspects have flown the coop. I don't know where they are this evening, except for Dwyer, who sent a note much earlier today that he would not be able to join us because he's caught up with duties elsewhere, and Athi is having some technical difficulties. The other suspects have not reported for duty, George.
Hold on a minute. I did hear from Margaret. I think Margaret said she would definitely try to be here with us tonight, but that she apparently she has company. She's doing some entertaining this evening.
Ooh, all right. Okay.
But the rest of the gang, I mean, no Catherine, no Artie. I know that Dwyer said he would be preoccupied this evening. And you haven't heard from Jerry?
Yeah, I just tried to reach him a while ago and he told me be with us in about half an hour.
Okay.
So we await the other suspects to join us. So in the meantime, it's just me and you, kid. Give us time.
Yes, old lady.
Give us time to catch up,
Oh, yeah.
And of course, here comes Richardson. And of course, welcome to all those who take the time out to join us on a Thursday evening for Mek We Chat. Why, I tell you, I love being here, I love being here. It's the happiest place on radio.
I see somebody.
Good evening, Rich.
I see somebody propping up their cheek tonight.
Good evening.
Yes, it's Richardson. Richardson is with us. Our suspects have abandoned us, it seems, So, George and I were just about to behave like we're the only two people in the place.
Hey, I could drop off if there's a need to, you know what is said about three.
Three
Stooges?
Hello. Yeah.
But we're not alone, eh? We're not alone because I see that Kipling Francis is out there already. And so is Tony Ben saying good evening to you guys. And there are a number of other people who are incognito so far.
Right. But as usual, as we say in this business, the show must go on.
Absolutely.
Yes. So,
hey, George.
Yes, sir.
On a sad note, I understand we've lost Chasley David.
Yes, sir. That I got that news this afternoon. Apparently, he passed away sometime this morning.
Yeah, who's a oblique family member, but I guess an in-law to us.
I'm not sure if we were related. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some distant relationship.
By law.
Pardon me?
By law. One of his sisters was married to a cousin of ours.
Okay. I know that he and my parents were very, very close friends.
That's why.
Yeah. Boy, that's a loss, eh?
Major loss.
And by the way, for people who they may not identify the name Chasley David, Chasley is actually the father of Member of Parliament Peter David. Yeah?
Yeah.
A lot of the older folks are stepping out, eh? Yeah?
Yep. The line is getting shorter. Everybody take one step forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And
certainly express our condolences.
This afternoon when I put the notice up on my WhatsApp forum, as soon as I put it up, within minutes, people started extending their condolences and saying how sad. And I'm sometimes baffled when people say how sad that Richie or Bev or George has gone on. And I wonder how appropriate that is. I mean, these people are probably a heck of a lot better off than we are right now. You're smiling, Richie.
No, remember the growing up in the Pentecostal church, You know, they talk about, you know, the whole idea, and someday yonder we'll never grow older, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but, you know, in New Orleans, they celebrate the death, you
Yeah.
know, so so every culture have a different approach to it, you know, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that it is sad. It is always sad when a loved one leaves, and you know that you won't be able to interact with that person again as you used to. Even today, I was listening to a lady who lost a brother. She said, you know, his number is still in her, and she'd still dial the number just to see if he'd answer, even though she know he's gone. So the that thing called death, which separates us that way, it does bring sadness, you know. It doesn't matter if the person was old, even if they were sick, as long as it's someone you love.
But
There
like,
is just that sadness when they do.
but like you're saying, Bev, you know,
Yeah.
perhaps the sadness we feel is about the fact that we're no longer able to interact with a person. Okay.
Yeah.
But you know, as
Yeah.
far as what about the person himself or herself? You know, I mean, I really do believe that some of these people are gone to a better place. I really do. You were going to say something, Richie?
No, I'm good. No, I'm okay.
Okay. Well,
Welcome, Catherine. She
I
Miss
finally
Catherine,
Hi.
good
woke up.
night. Good
Hello.
night.
Hello. Good night. I heard you all talking about me on Facebook. You didn't get my email. Sorry about that. I was having
Okay.
problem log. I was having problem logging in to my laptop.
Yeah, I had some technical difficulties too. I think
Yeah.
technical difficulties, boy, I think we all better get together and set up our internet system, you know. I think
I
Richard
need to buy. I need a new
here.
laptop myself. It's terrible. It's giving me so much problem.
Get an apple, I say.
Yeah, I need to get that.
Oh gosh.
but like
Yeah.
I said, we're not.
And I'm not a sales rep for Apple, by the way.
You're not. Yes, George, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was saying that we really aren't alone. Yes, it's only four of us here, but we've now been joined by Arthur Langine out there in the Big Apple. John snuck in without even realizing that Margaret is not here tonight. You know that Margaret's always keeping us on our P's and Q's about being on time. Well, John says, good night. Don't tell Margaret, but I'm sneaking in. So
Good night.
John is there. Claude Putna is there. He's saying good evening to you guys. And guess what? Margaret, despite the fact that she is preoccupied tonight with whatever she's doing in New York, like I said, she's entertaining tonight. She has checked in here and says, hey guys, here in spirit. So she did promise, you know, that she would really try to peek in from time to time. And sure enough, she is. She's not on the forum with us, but she's certainly out there on Facebook. And regarding the conversation we were having about Chansley David, John says the only people who want to be 100 are 99-year-olds. John, I'm not even sure I want to go that far. Fitzroy Adams is in New York. He's with us. And Margaret says, yeah, she's sneaking in. Let's see. Wayne Francis is saying good evening to you guys. And where is Jerry George? Pro Lucas Ann is asking, where is Jerry George? Well, Pro Lucas, we've been informed that Jerry is probably going to be with us in about half an hour or so. And who knows? I haven't heard anything to the contrary from Artie, but he'll probably just pop up, which he usually does. Just boom, and
Yes.
there he is.
He did say he's having technical difficulties. So
Pardon me?
if he Afi
Yeah.
did send a note, he's having technical difficulties as well.
Boy, everybody's
So
screwed up tonight.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Uh-huh.
hopefully he will get sorted out and be able to join us soon. And That's why I'm advocating for us to set up our own internet company, you know. I
Yeah,
think
we need to.
help us there.
Well, look, the gentleman sitting right below you is somebody who may be able to provide you with some guidance in that
Yes,
area.
you know. So on a Thursday evening, we don't have to worry. We just plug into our system and bang, we're good to go.
I see you've come into some good financial resources.
Did you, Bev? You didn't tell me.
Well, that's what I mean. If you want to set up your own internet,
So, Richie, you're telling me we will not be able to just run a bingo or run a motorcade and have enough money?
you need a little bit more. Just a wee bit. But you know, technology is changing fast.
Let me ask you this. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm hearing you.
I don't know why, but for some reason, John out there in Carriacou is always, and I mean always, complaining that my audio is low compared to the rest of the people. I think he did this morning when I had, who did I have this morning? Alan on. And he did yesterday, and George, your audio is a little low. So, John, maybe you need to get some of the wax out of those ears of yours. Just kidding, just kidding. So, audio is Bev.
Yes, we have.
By the way, you're in Jamaica, right?
Yes, that's where I am right now. And I tell you, today was a rainy day.
Really?
Raining all. So I hope you are enjoying. No, I think the bright sunshine is being a little bit too bright in some places. Some people have to see some rain.
Is it
But I
hot up
think you
there?
have to tell us.
Sorry, Richie, go ahead.
No, you need to tell us which one of the four systems you're experiencing.
To be honest, I didn't pay attention to see which one, if any, was affecting the island, you know, because it's just one of those days when I didn't get to pay attention to the weather report.
Just pulling your leg.
No, I realize that, but now that you mention it, I probably should be looking. But some forecasters are predicting a three-way clash or a four-way clash. So
No, that's unlikely because a number of the systems, two of them, I think they're just coming out into mid-Atlantic and going straight up to the north, and then pulling back and going back towards Europe. So that's two less, and I think the other one is past Bermuda. So I think we may only be dealing with one system or something like that.
Is it very warm up there, Bev?
yes, it is. Yes, it is. The same sort of heat and humidity that's affecting the rest of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
It's here as well.
Global warming?
Usually, no. You usually get that before storms, eh? Because the push from the wind from the storm pushes the hot weather in, and then here comes the storm right after it. So that's why Grenada was so hot last week. You know, and then all of a sudden here there was showers of blessing.
You know, Richie, it's interesting that you should mention that, Richie. We've been going to the beach every morning. Well, I haven't for the last few days or so. But just before Karen came along, one of the people who goes to the beach with us, she said to me, boy, you notice how warm the water is? It's getting warmer and warmer. And we're talking like, 5:30 in the morning. And yes, it generally is warm. But on that particular day, it was really, really warm. And she said to me, you know, George, that is the forerunner to a storm.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, a couple of days later, we heard about, she was still some way off, but we heard about Karen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's some truth to what you're saying there.
Yeah, so it's because I mean what Grenada is, I think 11 degrees above the north of the equator. So
12.
we have some hot water. 12, excuse me, George. Sorry, George.
Yeah.
I have to go. I could do a geography. Yeah, but what you do, you do get some push, and then here's a big storm thereafter.
Yeah. Now, since we're talking storms and weather and all that, let me ask you guys: have you guys been following what has been making the rounds on social media and the general media about climate change and this young lady from Sweden, Greta Thunberg?
I have not really been following it, but I have seen it and paid a little bit of attention to some of it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think I need to know, but do not necessarily need to indulge in.
Yeah. Margaret,
which one you do not need to indulge in? Sorry. You said you didn't need to indulge in.
Yeah, the address by the...
by the young lady. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see you shaking your head, Richie. How come?
No, I agree. I mean, I think, look, I come from it to the perspective that I have sat last year. A friend urged me to take this course with the Swedish Resilience Center on the whole idea of resiliency and such and development. So, I understand all the nuances of the game now, what's going on in this biosphere we live in. And the fact that man is now having, they call it the age of the Anthropocene, wherein basically man's impact is such that when it does hit the environment, it's not easily fixable. As you know, the environment could have taken care of itself, but the magnitude is so great now, that at some point in time we have to pull back and start moving towards, all the various options, the renewables, stop using paper cups and plastic cups and straws and all this sort of foolishness. So, but, it's going to take an effort, so.
I wish you were in that conversation with Alan Baczynski and me this morning, because we were sort of debating whether or not, we all know that something is happening out there. It's definitely getting warmer. We know that something's happening, but it seems to me like the real debate is about whether or not this is man-made. You're saying, Richie, that you believe it is.
Yes.
All right.
I believe, and I don't know if it's man-made, but I would definitely say mankind has contributed greatly to the demise of the planet. And I'll tell you why I say that. The earth will replenish itself if left to replenish itself. But if mankind gets in there and does things that prevents that from happening naturally, then of course the earth will suffer. So I believe that if the earth is left to, let's say, just die, just like a seed will die, but when you plant it, it will grow. That's the science of seeds. The earth will replenish itself if left to do so. So I wouldn't say that mankind is the cause, but mankind is contributing to the earth's natural life cycle, where it cleanses and replenishes itself and continues to grow, and flora and fauna live together in harmony. That is my perspective on it. So if we get mankind to pull back, which is a massive paradigm shift, because there are so many things. Richie talk about the nuances involved in this thing, and there are. If we can get mankind to just pull back and let the earth do its work, then we would not have to worry about climate change. The earth has been through an ice age, it's been through floods, it's been through a lot of things that we refer to as natural hazards and natural disasters. And it always replenishes itself. And it can do that and can continue to do that. We just need to leave it alone. But mankind will not leave it alone. That will not happen. So the fight goes on under the umbrella of climate change. And we just need to stay in our space as human beings and let other living things stay in their space. And we'll be good. But that's a perfect world. It won't happen, you know? So the fight continues.
You know,
Yeah,
go ahead,
there's
Richie.
something that says if you remove an ant from the food chain, you cause a horrific imbalance.
Exactly.
If you remove man from the food chain, the earth will bloom. So
Yes.
I'll leave that with you for your interpretation.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You know, that's what this young lady is trying to do. She is trying to get the word out that this thing is man-made and that we're the ones who have to do something to address this problem if we're not going to be headed for total disaster, total oblivion. It is therefore, you know, pretty interesting to see the feedback this week. You wouldn't believe the number of videos that there are out there on YouTube lambasting this young lady. There are people who have even accused the United Nations of child abuse. They feel that the UN is actually using this young lady to push the pro-climate change agenda.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, George, I think how you have to, sometimes you need to step back and look at these things and understand that the energy on both sides is extreme. You know, yeah, you have these extremes, and the extremes are the ones that really come to the fore. Mm-hmm. But I think for us in the Caribbean, what we need to be doing is looking at our environment and how well do we manage our hillsides, and that's the one of the most important aspects. What do we do with our mangroves? You know, so for example, the storm in Mozambique. When there was a UN conference, one of the things the government in Mozambique recognized was the whole idea of managing the mangroves, the wetlands. Mm. You know, I mean, George, well, I know you don't get time to get around to your meal, but, you know, there's the matter up in Sweden, where they removed the marshland, and of course, you know, it all was well and good for the first few years because of all the nutrients, and thereafter they had to switch to fertilizers. Mm-hmm. Of course, the fertilizers tore up the environment, and thereafter you have a barren strip. And you know, but what we have to do is to recognize the fact that we cannot just denude our hillsides. You know, so we in the Caribbean and other small countries have to first look and try to take care of our environment as best we can. However, there's an overreaching aspect to it, and that's basically the interconnectivity, the global interconnectivity of climate. So what happens in Europe if they're cutting the forests and such to do farming will have an impact on how much nice wet clouds are reach into Africa or into India, and which of course, you know, will provide water there and continue the whole chain until we reach and we get our weather. It comes from East Africa, straight across into Central Africa, into West Africa, and then across to us in the Caribbean. So, I mean, but our focus has to be taking care of our environment in the region and making sure that, we don't have all of this flooding. I mean, in Trinidad, and I'm not saying Tobago, but in Trinidad, if it starts raining in Marival, which is just north of Port of Spain, after 10, 15 minutes, Port of Spain starts flooding. And, because here you have a situation where the river the bed has been concreted. So, and they've created all these box drains, which just gets the water quicker from point A, the higher point, down to the lower points.
Yeah.
Now, there's no absorption along the way. Now, then you stand back and you ask yourself, what is happening to the groundwaters, the aquifers, which are there? Are they being replenished? Would we start seeing sinkholes in these places? So all of our planners and such, they need to start using the data and such to find out exactly what is going on. What are the ramifications of what is happening with these box drains and, denuding the hillside and that sort of stuff? Because it has a net negative multiplier effect on the environment. And then of course, we get to the coastline where, the mangroves are being damaged, as you guys were saying, somebody was emptying sewage into the wrong place and that type of thing. We cannot continue like that. The whole idea of using straws and plastics and such. I mean, we have to consider, moving away from these things and having better sewage and wastewater management. I mean, the beauty about that is that if you have a good sewage and wastewater treatment facility, you could get grey water. And I mean, in Australia, they say the water is drinkable, but Caribbean people wouldn't want to hear that. But still, that water could go for agricultural use and such. And it will always be there year round because you always have sewage and waste matter to be processed. So these are the type of strategies you need to integrate to really ensure that you providing a national good. And I think the whole idea is using good data so that policymakers could come up with the appropriate policies and such.
That is my addition to what you're saying, because the policymakers and those who fund all the climate change activities, they meet and talk about these things. And we hear of the hundreds of millions of dollars, billions even, being put towards climate change. Grenada right now has posted that it has over $125 million for climate change projects.
And still want more.
Sorry, George?
And still want more.
Exactly. And they have these conferences ever so often, and these things are discussed, Richardson. The very solutions you talk about are discussed. The money is put out there, but we don't see it. What is happening? And who is joking? Who is serious about climate change? It certainly does not seem to be the leaders and organizations that meet to discuss it, because they go home and nothing happens. Year to year, nothing happens. So let's take a little break right here.
Hold on, Beverly. Before you hit the break, I don't want us to leave out our viewers. So let me say hi to these folks here. First of all, Carla Clement is saying good evening, and she says, the truth is, Sister Beverley Sinclair, man has taken from Mother Earth but hasn't helped to replenish its natural resources. Very sad. And I see Richie is nodding in agreement. John Nosinek says, in my humble opinion, I think it goes around in cycles, but man has forced the issue by mismanaging its resources. Beverly agrees with that one. You guys are taking turn in agreeing. A little while ago, we were talking about whether or not my audio is low. Well, first of all, Tony Benn, apparently this man is on a boat somewhere right now. He's in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere. Tony Benn says, well, I'm on the Atlantic Ocean heading to Florida from Massachusetts, and no problems with the sounds. And he says, the weather report we got on this vessel, we good for now. Hope things stay that way for you, sir.
Yeah.
And then Margaret Francis says, yes, George, Sharon was right. When we were talking about the fact that the water down at Grandance was warmer than normal, she says, old people knew these things, and they always told us that when the water gets warm, it's precedent of a storm or hurricane. Ryan Jabon's there, and he says the climate change is real. And John says, and the burning off of the forest in Brazil. Richie, I would love to hear your comment on that one. Hello, Richie. Your mic is on mute. Your mic is on mute.
Yeah, no, sorry, there's some background noise, so I couldn't start speaking.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the
forest in Brazil.
As far as the forest is concerned in Brazil, you saw how quickly that situation fixed itself when the European Union basically said, okay, fine, this is what we are going to do if the situation isn't addressed. And once that edict flowed down, that was it, the situation was addressed. 2,500 military officers, military folks were pressed into service. And the thing, but I think Ati is better at this than I am as far as replenishment of rainforests and such. But one of the beauties of the Amazon is it does replenish quite quickly. If it's not used again for farming or agricultural or animal farming, right? So that's the challenge we're going to face, and of course, again we come back to are there solutions? And one of the things they're speaking about now is vertical farming, wherein basically greenhouse stuff grows just as fast, and from what I understand, it's just as tasty. So we have to start considering these alternatives. There was I think it was either on BBC or the other news service they have, when one gentleman was standing on a British farm and said, as they were closing off, he said, yes, I would like to turn this back into a forest to help the environment. And that's the type of thing that needs to be considered.
A little while ago, Richie, you were talking about the box strains. John and Kerry, who says, box strains don't allow the waters to take its natural course. Therefore, it will not replenish the underground water reserves.
No, and he's correct, especially again, once the bed is concreted, because it just goes straight downhill. So, but we continue to do it, and when technically there are natural solutions which can be used to address these matters, but again, I know Bev would say, but basically it comes down to the folks writing the policies and such and passing it on to the appropriate policymakers for final sign-off and such.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you see, you must have the knowledge, and people must do the research. You know, because even when you look at there are two spots in the United States, Louisiana, or not Louisiana, sorry, New Orleans and Texas. You know, look what happened with Harvey. You know, first they had this huge flood, they say what a 500-year flood or whatever it was. And then the last one a month ago or 3 weeks ago was even more water than Harvey. But there's some literature that speaks to why that situation exists. And again, it's because of the developers rushing in and using poorly planned schemes, housing schemes, and we are where we are today. And the situation in New Orleans, you know, it's just the same thing, you know. So
I know what's the common denominator in all this.
Man.
Tony Ben says
Mankind.
Caribbean people are drinking gray water, but they don't know it. Reverse osmosis water can come from anywhere, even from, oh my gosh, even from the toilet. We import RO bottled water. I see that one stumped you guys.
No, that would be reverse osmosis.
Okay. All right, folks, let's say good evening to Junior George and take the break that Bev promised us a few minutes ago, and we'll come right back with the Mek We Chat team right after this.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. First, make a family disaster plan and ensure that everyone in your household is familiar and comfortable with it. Remember to add batteries and flashlights to your emergency kit. Now, for electrical safety. Familiarize yourself with your electrical panel, as it may be necessary to switch off the power during a storm or flood. Make sure you install a transfer or isolation switch to prevent your generator feeding electricity to Grenlec's line. If trees are too close to power lines, call Grenlec at 237 for advice. By following these easy steps, you will be well on your way to being hurricane ready. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Can I have a chicken lunch, please? Large.
Real nice today.
I don't want that.
But you just asked for a chicken lunch.
I don't have problem with the lunch. Afraid the container.
What is the problem with it?
These styrofoam containers, they don't good for the environment. They shorten with life.
What foolishness you telling me? So what you want me to use?
Put my food in this.
Where you get that?
At the food fair, where you could get all biodegradable food boxes and disposable food supplies like cups, plates, anything you could think about. Name it, it's there. And they don't harm the environment. Food fair, taking the lead in cleaning up and protecting the environment. Hey, like you take me advice, you get in your biodegradable food supplies.
Well, girl, I supporting who's supporting the environment. That is why I shop in at food fair.
Food fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets. Products distributed by Hubbard's agency, Kirani James Boulevard.
All right, while you guys were having your private little tete-a-tete there during the break, a couple of comments came in. First, one from John. John says, policies are talked and talked about, but are made, but are never implemented. Where have we heard that before? Yeah? And then Margaret says, you know, it's all well and good to write policies and use data and all that good stuff. But if you don't have buy-in from the top, you're going nowhere. Leaders can't preach one thing and practice another. You have to lead by example, as cliched as that may be. Bev? Hello, Bev? Hello, Bev?
Hello.
Hi, there she is. Okay.
Yes, I was wondering if you weren't hearing me.
I wasn't, but I am
Right.
now.
Okay. Yes, so and that is what I was saying, that the leaders, the policymakers, the funders, these are the people who get together and discuss and assign the resources to get the things done, but they don't happen. And then they call upon the population to make these adjustments, like with the plastics and the straws and the styrofoam and everything else. You call upon the population to make these adjustments. And in general, people do. People try to adapt and make the changes that are called for. But the funders, the policymakers, they don't implement. So we get caught up in this, I don't even know what to call it, because it's not really a cycle. We're just stuck in this situation where on the one hand, the population asks to do this and they're doing it. But on the other hand, the kind of injection of resources and the skills and the expertise that you are supposed to see to make the difference as far as being climate change resilient and all the other fancy terms that are bandied about every day. As far as that is concerned, you do not see it on the ground. St. George's has been named as one of the climate smart cities. How many years we've been hearing that? And we have not seen any move to make any change into making St. George's a climate smart city.
Beverly,
We had yes, George.
sorry to interrupt you, but you know, John seems to agree with you. He says that on Carriacou, he's responding to Margaret here, he says on Carriacou they get environmental impact studies and ignore them. Not just in Carriacou. I mean, look at what happened. Who was it? The Organization of American States, when they came up with that recommendation years ago about not building any more hotels on Grandad's Beach because it had reached its carrying capacity, and they just went.
Right. Yeah, they just ignore them, and the same people who sit in meetings and parrot and spout about how much Grenada is doing for climate change. They are the same ones who come back and allow people to build almost in the water on the beach. So where does your priority lie? You know, how can you be so hypocritical about the whole thing? You're trying to pretend, or you are pretending that you're working towards being climate resilient and supporting all the moves against climate change and protecting your country and protecting the city. But on the ground, it's not happening. It's just not happening.
All right, let me dump one on Richie here. Richie, it seems like we all agree that you know, the policymakers, they're falling short. They're failing us. Are you hopeful that there'll be a change in that mindset in the near future, where policymakers listen to, you know, experts and people like you who have done your studies, you know the facts, and you try to convince policymakers, hey, this is the way we should go, and then they thumb their noses at you. Are you hopeful?
In some regard, I've seen success in the Caribbean, right? With the liberalization of the telecom sector is one, right? Which I was involved in from its onset. I agree with what Bev is saying as far as the donors are concerned. Basically, having projects tied to funding. So, for example, there's a policy and such, well, the policy tied to funding, sorry. So basically, if there's a policy, the EU may come along and say, look, we will make this happen. We will fund it. So let's say, as our friend was saying about grey water, let's decide that we want to put in a plant to handle the sewage and such, and the data is there that we have enough waste matter to have a plant up and running. Then once agencies and international donor is funding it directly, it will get built. And they could manage it for 4 or 5 years or whatever it is along with the government and work, just to make sure that folks learn how to run and operate the system. So maybe that's one way of working hand in hand with the donor agencies. I remember there was supposed to be a Caribbean accelerator program on climate change. I don't know what happened with that program. It involved the gentleman from Virgin Air.
It was Richard Branson.
Yeah, Branson, yeah. So I think it's Sir Richard Branson, but yeah. So I don't know where that program is, and something like that could be very, very fruitful to the region.
Of course.
But again, Bev, I hear what you're saying, and I fully agree. Is that, and same as MSF in NYC was saying that the whole idea of, you could have the policies in place and such, but you need to have these things implemented. Mm-hmm. And I think when people understand that these things are necessary, then it gets done. Because as I said, I saw it get done when it was down to the telecom sector. And we got rid of that organization called Cable and Wireless as being this dominant provider. So there's opportunities out there, and there's hope that we can get there. But we will need, as I said, to work with our international donor agencies to ensure that things are matched with policy specific, so that projects can be developed around that project. Policy, sorry, and
mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. And how do we make that happen from the ground up? I would not claim to have an answer.
Well, you could always fly out and go see Sir Richard Branson. Always people. I don't know where the accelerator program is at the moment. As a matter of fact, I had the contact to the folks. I promise you guys something. I will reach out to them and send it through Jerry, because George doesn't read my emails, so that it can be distributed to everyone. Mm-hmm. But I will ask them for the update as to where things are, and yes. just talk to them about this type of exchange, mm-hmm. and they need to have the data. Now some folks would scoff at data and such, but where we are today, I mean, at least, with these young people or millennials doing these things called like data analytics and pushing data to do certain things, it improves the efficiency and such. It improves, it targets, it tells you what the actuality is in certain areas and such. Now, if a policymaker decides that he isn't going to accept that, that's another story. But at least you would know that the analysis is there. I mean, that's, you can do all that you can do. I mean, and then, of course, the final mile or the final yard, whatever it is, it's just beyond your pay grade. So,
Right.
but as I say, I will find out what's going on with the accelerator program and pass it on to you guys, so you'll decide how you wish to deal with it.
Okay. Yeah, because just recently when Tropical Storm Karen passed through Grenada, it is the morning when Karen passed through that a list of hurricane shelters was released, which, we make excuses for these things when they happen. Not me, and I won't say we because I'm not putting myself into that excuse thing. If it's one thing I hate, and it's to make excuses. But excuses are made all around for this thing. When a storm is literally on your doorstep, you put out an incomplete list of shelters, as if you know where the storm is going to hit. What parts of the country will be affected more than others. So, okay, this part of the country will be more affected. So let's give them some shelters. Let's open some shelters here. And this list comes out the morning of the storm, when some places are already flooded. And I asked myself the question, with all the resources that are gone into climate resilience and climate change and managing all the issues relating to climate matters and natural hazards on the ground, with all the training and resources that have gone into it, even more so since Hurricane Ivan in Grenada, since Hurricane Maria in Dominica, and in 2019, under threat of another storm, something as basic as a list of shelters is released the morning of the storm, when the storm is already here. That just made no sense. Absolutely no sense. First of all, the people who need that information the most probably will not see it because the storm is already there. You're scrambling, trying to sort yourself and your family out. Where are you going to see this list of shelters? Who's going to tell you about the list of shelters? And it's interesting that the list came out the morning of the storm, and there was no contact information for shelter managers. So you send out a list of shelters during a storm, and you don't send out a list. Included in that list or not included in that list are the names and contact numbers for the shelter managers. Now tell me something, Mr. George Grant. Does that make sense?
No, it didn't. And it was also ironic that the list eventually came out on the morning after I wrote to NADMA complaining that I had not received the list of shelters. We're well into the second half of the hurricane season. We just had a storm poking up our noses here. No shelters. But so I decided one more time, I'd been after them since before the hurricane season started, but one more time, just let me ask. And sure enough, it did come out the day after.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Yes, and I was going to reference to all the requests that were made for the list of shelters before and at the top of the hurricane season. I remember Senator Senator Garraway, sitting in news conferences and being asked about a list of shelters. And he never provided a list. And at one point in one of the subsequent news conferences, he said, oh, a list remains in place until a new list is provided. The list from last year is the one which is current until the list for this year comes up. So wherever the shelter was last year, that is where it is this year until a new list is put out. He did not address the inspection of these shelters to ensure that they were still in proper condition to be called shelters. Nothing. That wasn't addressed. And again, for me, which is the critical issue, it's the personnel and the resources for these shelters. Because it makes no sense to say, okay, this school down the road is a shelter. And when you get there, you do not know who has the key. You do not know who is supposed to have the key. When you get inside, there are no beds. There is no food. There is no water. There is nothing. What's the point of going into 4 concrete walls when you do not know how long you're going to be there? A shelter is supposed to be a shelter, a place to go to ride out the storm, not just until the storm itself passes, but depending on the damage, you may have to be there for a few days. So it has to be a place that is properly managed, properly set up. But you do not see this happening in the ministry or in the organization that is responsible for managing disaster in the country. We have a National Disaster Management Agency, and I have said it over and over that the National Disaster Management Agency's job is not to issue weather reports. It is to get the weather reports and decide what action needs to be taken based on the weather report which it gets. But NADMA keeps issuing weather reports as if that is its role and function. What's the point of telling the nation we're going to be hit by a storm or we're going to be affected by the outer bands of some storm? Expect flooding, expect landslide. Okay, great. You are responsible for managing disasters that occur from natural hazards. What are people supposed to do before, during, and after these situations? That is your role, NADMA. Your role is not weather report. There's a meta office for that. So NADMA really needs to cease trying to become Met Office number 2 or a rubber stamp for the Met Office and get to doing its work of getting the nation prepared before, during, after. That is what they're supposed to do. And Tropical Storm Karen just showed that NADMA is not taking its role seriously. It's not. There is way at the end of September, we could just be getting an incomplete list of shelters. And NADMA would try to convince somebody that it's taking its job seriously. No way. And within the organization, I cannot say where the breakdown is. I cannot say where the weakness is, but I know that people are at risk because of whatever weaknesses and whatever breakdown in the system is happening there. When floods are happening and no one knows where to go, where to find relief, what to do, then that's a problem. People can die.
Hi, Bev.
Yes.
Yeah, if I may. I think you have to ask yourself also how much experience NADMA has at actually being in a storm situation, right?
I just want to say.
I hear you. I mean, I've seen what happens after these disasters when it's very difficult to find personnel and such, and people reporting appropriately. Now, one of the things I always worry about when you speak about these flood centers in the region is one, whether or not the centers are stocked with all the appropriate supplies, right? And part of the reality of the region is that is it affordable? Because you're speaking about now having mattresses, beds, and all enough water. I mean, I know the amount of water you have to have in these places, bathroom facilities that actually work, because the last thing you want is for your sewage lines to be under in a situation where it cannot pump out. Then you don't want to see what will happen inside of these facilities.
And within minutes.
And within minutes, yes. So there are all of these logistics and such, and unfortunately, you just cannot expect people to jump up one morning and say, "Oh, we have a storm coming in." Now, I could tell you, I mean, I've been to these disaster centers and such, and even though we're getting updates from the local radio stations, we were still looking at what was happening at the international side. So what sort of reports NOAA was putting out and everything like that, because that's just the reality. Who has the technology to reach, to actually give you what's happening on the ground? So I think with these national centers and the folks who are tasked to run them, I mean, it all depends on people just trying their best to see how they can help put things in place and how quickly things can be done. But, for a first storm, second storm, or anything like that, it is a challenge. No, I was at a conference in DC last year, and where Sidero was saying they have this and they have that, and they don't know what to do. I don't know if Sidero even showed up after Karen passed through, but so we have these regional organizations, but are they also willing to play the role that they signed on to play? So I mean, I have my views on regional organizations, but I'll keep it to myself.
I'll say something on the regional organizations, but before we get there, you mentioned the experience that the personnel within NADMA may have in dealing with natural hazards and disasters. I don't believe the personnel within NADMA, in and of themselves, even need to be the ones to have experienced any of that. The Caribbean has been hit with several major storms, certainly since Hurricane Ivan hit Grenada in 2003, if we want quite recent, 2004, yes. If we want to be recent and remain in this century. 2004, Hurricane Ivan hit Grenada. That was an experience for the entire region. 2005, there was Hurricane Emily. And fast forward, 2017, Hurricane Maria in Dominica. 2016 it was when the Virgin Islands were hit. So there have been so many major hurricanes passing through this region, certainly within the last 10 to 15 years, that if the people within NADMA have not learned from these experiences, then I think we have the wrong people in NADMA. And
Agreed, Bev.
yeah,
Yeah, I just said I agreed, Bev, because I was thinking the same thing. What type of experience they had when the 2004 hurricane Ivan came. That's what I was thinking when you were saying, well, these people, they provide this shelter, this list, and they don't give you the person who, the number or the who to talk to. No, no facilities is provided, nothing like that. And I said things don't work like that. I was wondering, do they have experience of doing that before? But then they should be. As she said, they should be have experience because all of these things that happen in the region. So they should know.
Catherine, there was no facility back in 2004.
That's what I thought.
Right. Okay. So this whole idea. No, it's not that matter. They weren't prepared. There just wasn't any facilities. I mean, and that's part of the reality. But I think there needs to be a view as to how can we strengthen these things. Mm-hmm. Because sitting here and doing a post-mortem is all well and good. But does it really contribute? How could we improve the situation? How could the situation be improved? What needs to be done?
All right, here.
Because, sorry, George, go ahead.
Here's a question that just came in from John as you guys are talking here. He's asking, who and how is the staff of NADMA selected? To which Margaret responds, thank you very much, John. If appointments were professional rather than political, probably we won't find ourselves in this morass every hurricane season.
Hey, that's ridiculous.
you see, an organization like NADMA will probably have a very small staff, but it must have a large list of volunteers and part-time workers that they mobilize when there is a natural hazard, when there is a disaster. They must have that. If they don't have that, then they are not able to carry out their function.
No,
a shelter manager, yeah.
Bev, the realities in the Caribbean is that yes, you have these small staff, but the heavy lifters are expected to be the military folks and the police organizations. That's the reality. I mean.
Yes, the military personnel have a role to play. Yeah. You do not expect military personnel to be shelter managers.
No, not the shelter managers, I said, but the heavy lifters. The heavy lifters.
Well, you're talking about heavy lifters in a practical sense then.
I'm speaking about the guys who would be in the field, doing what has to be done. I hear you as far as the managements
right, and that's what
and at their centers. But again, that's training, huh? So.
Yeah, but military personnel are not the only group of people that will be needed. And I go back to what I was saying. NADMA will have a small staff, but they must have a large list of part-time workers and volunteers. The position of shelter manager is not a full-time job, but you must have people who are trained and who are constantly being trained in these positions so that when they are called on, they are ready. So a shelter manager cannot be someone, Richardson, and I'm sure you would agree with me on that. A shelter manager cannot be someone that you just go and call a random person at the beginning when you expect a storm to hit. You go and call somebody and tell them, come, we need to manage this shelter here. If you do that, that's a recipe for another disaster.
I agree. But but the reality is that once you have these type of disasters, people quickly turn inwards and start looking at their families.
That is true.
And it's getting people to show up. Because and I hate having to go back
And
But for Ivan, I mean, basically it was the folks from the extra regional folks who were there helping. I mean, from from the OECS, Barbados, Trinidad, Guyana, Venezuela. Those were the folks who were there.
And that is an absolute fact, and that is why the training, the retraining, and continuous training is necessary.
Yeah, but understand one thing: training and retraining still doesn't guarantee you that in the face of a disaster, Beverly is going to leave her family. Right? Your roof has blown off overnight. Let me finish. Let me finish, please. It doesn't guarantee that Beverly's roof, having blown off last night, is going to leave her family to report to a location. That's one of the challenges we face.
And that's a part of the training and the retraining. Because when you are being trained to work in disasters and to manage disasters, item number one, or way up at the top of the list, is that you have to secure your family first. You must. You cannot take a shelter manager from a home, and that shelter manager may be the head of a family, could be a father, could be a mother who runs a household. You can't just pluck the person out of the house. So the training includes that you secure your family first. Just because the person is being trained to manage shelters doesn't mean, and you rightly said it, that the person's roof is not going to go. So they have to take care of that first. They have to be as comfortable as possible within a disaster situation to know that they can go and take up duties elsewhere. And I can well imagine that in some cases they may have to take the whole family with them to the shelter where they're going to work. But all of that will be covered and dealt with in the training, the retraining, the continuous. Because you cannot train a person just to manage a shelter and not train them about managing the first point, which is the home, which is home. So it has to be included. And this is why I say it again, that NADMA must have these people at all times that are constantly there, part of the system, part of the process, because when a storm is coming, it is time to roll out, not time to plan. You can't be having a planning meeting the morning of the storm. No, that is the time to put your planning into action. And I am really, really fed up, George. I'm fed up, Catherine, fed up, Richardson, of people getting up every year and doing the same stupidness simply because we fail to address shortcomings. We fail to hold people responsible. We fail to take the business of saving lives seriously when we are in disaster situations. And every year, oh, you need to clean the drains, rainy season coming. Oh, you need to do this, rainy season coming. Oh, you need to do that, rainy season coming. George, have you ever seen a project in Grenada where anybody goes into communities and show people in the community how to clean drains properly? And I tell people all the time to go and clean the drains. How do you clean drains? Do you think that you just wake up in the morning and go and clean a drain? That is not how it works. People be held responsible for littering, and the anti-litter laws should be enforced. But on the other side, if you have drains that are backed up so that water cannot pass through, you do not call out people in a community and tell them to go and clean drains without a proper framework in place. This is how it's going to be done. And at the end of that process, what happens to the stuff you clean from the drains? How many times do we see it packed up right beside the drain? And the first 10 drops of rain that fall, it goes right back in the drain because there was no plan for disposal. Telling everybody, come out and clean the drain. We need to stop this, man. We need to, the resources are there. We hear about the resources all the time, so we know the resources are there. Why not use it properly so that next year, 2019 is already a disaster. So 2020, can we look forward to seeing better preparation and better management of this thing called natural disaster?
All right, Bev, could we take a little break now?
Yes, we can.
A natural disaster can change your life in minutes. Preparation is the best protection for your family and business. Prepare now. Create a disaster plan and make sure everyone knows what to do. Store water, non-perishable food, and medication. Remember basic emergency supplies such as batteries and flashlights. Trim overhanging trees. If trees near power lines are unsafe to trim, call GRENADA at 237 for assistance or advice. Install surge protectors to safeguard your electrical devices against outages and intermittent surges. For more information, visit grenadac.com.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
Because your vehicle is a necessity, being roadworthy is critical. Hubbard's Motor Department introduces its new tire and battery sales and service outlet located at Building Supplies Compound in Grandans, close to the Sugar Mill Roundabout. Available are a wide range of competitively priced tires, maintenance-free batteries, oils and lubricants. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, this outlet is equipped to provide you with fast and reliable service. Simply drive in and you'll be delighted with your service experience. For more information, contact 440-2087. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Alrighty, folks, we are back with our guest for our final segment tonight. Top left of your screen, Beverley Sinclair. She's in Jamaica. Right below Beverley is Catherine Edwards, and she is in a place called Croydon in England. To her left, Mr. Richardson Franklyn. He's in New Jersey. Am I correct, Mr. Franklyn?
Correct.
Hello?
Yes,
I don't
yes,
think he's
George,
there.
you're back with us.
And yours truly about Beverley. Final segment, girl.
Yes, yeah, we have a way of discussing topics on Mek We Chat. That's what I love about it. Yes, I have been speaking. Have you been hearing?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, yes. It's part of the versatility of Mek We Chat. I was saying that we can, because of the resources that we have within the chat room, we can actually segue into almost any discussion and make a program of it. We did not start out tonight to go so deep into climate change and all the offshoots of that. But we did. And I quite have enjoyed that discussion so far. Don't know about you guys, but I certainly have. It wakes you up and brings to mind some things which you may not think about in your normal course of duty. But really and truly, we should. We're still, for those of us in the Caribbean on this side of the hemisphere, we're still in the hurricane season, you know. Even New Jersey is not safe from hurricanes, is it, Richardson? No. You're muted.
Mike is mute.
Yeah. No, I remember starting Sandy in Haiti and coming home to see one of the trees on the front yard fell parallel to the house. And that was Sandy. That was the tail end of Sandy. Wow. So I was in Haiti for the onset and came back at the end of the week to see the results when Sandy got to New Jersey.
Yeah.
So and of course, you know, there's still, you know, and again, here we are in a first world country, and there's still recovery programs going on in South Queens and Southern New Jersey and that type of thing from Sandy after all of these years.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I say sometimes we have to try to be patient with our small island economies.
Yeah.
Because even in the larger countries, with all the money and the resources, people are still having problems.
Yeah.
Getting back to their homes and such. As a matter of fact, there was a bulletin this morning where they were basically saying to people, do not buy or do not purchase properties close to the sea. Yeah, because the reality is, you know, the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic, it's melting. You know, so.
When you live on an island the size of Grenada, even if you purchase property in the Grenada, you're still close to the sea, you know.
Yeah.
Or maybe come beachfront property.
Exactly. You know?
Yeah, it is.
No, it's a land mass like the US. Yes, you can get far away from the sea, but...
No, but in New York City, you have to remember places like New York City. These places are right on the water.
Yeah.
Right on the water. So what happens is that when the winds start pushing in, you get this, what is deemed as a storm surge. And it just pushes the water right up the river, you know, and right onto land wherever it is, you know. So there are all sort of modern engineering plans afoot to take care of these things. But again, you know, it will take a while to do everything. So there are challenges.
And recovery from these disasters, there's just no quick fix. It cannot happen overnight.
None whatsoever, yeah.
None. It takes years, decades.
Well, and that's why you see what is beginning to happen is that a number of power plants and such are now moving away from the fossil fuels and using wind turbines and solar panels. And now that the whole idea of storing the energy has become more efficient and more cost effective, they're making that switch, and they're making a switch because it was found that it's cheaper to use the alternative energies than even coal. So these companies, of course, you know, their business, they're looking at their bottom lines. But in looking at their bottom lines, they're also helping the environment, because now you're moving away from the fossils into the renewables.
Well, Richard, the move from fossils to renewable is not going to happen quickly, you know.
But It is happening. For example, for Florida Power and Light recently closed down a gas plant. And that's not something that any company just does like that. A gas plant, that's a major investment.
And replaced it with what?
Alternatives. And because the whole idea of storing alternatives, the technology is now where it's cheaper for them to store it. So this was what they call a surge plant. So at 9 a.m. on mornings, they would fire up this plant to meet the demand that comes when you have a full demand for power. And the alternatives now, the new storage technologies, they can now take care of that. It's because they've gotten the price of storage down enough that they can take care of it. And there are new technologies coming using molten metal and such to store, which is more effective than using the lithium-ion batteries that is currently being used. Because once you use a lithium-ion battery once and you charge it once, it's never the same as it was when you used it the first time. It's already started, it's natural drainage. But with the molten metal, you'll be able to hold on to your power rather than having this drainage. So, the technology is getting there, and these companies, they're interested in their bottom line, but they're also constantly innovating. So you hear people talk about Green Deal and such, fine. But the companies themselves, they're looking at their bottom line and how best they could be more efficient. And that's what's happening in the power sector.
Right. And I would like to know, I would be very interested in finding out from that Florida company how long it took them from the point of making the decision to close that gas plant and go strictly renewable. How long did that process take?
Well, I'm not sure on the dates and such, but
right, that is something.
But as far as I'm concerned, that's water under the bridge, because the main fact is that you've moved the delivery of all this carbon into the environment, and that's what I prefer to focus on. And see more and you will get more plants moving to that environment.
But it's I don't see it as water under the bridge. I put that in the realm of data collection.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about switching over to renewables, it's giving up an entire industry. It's not a simple thing. So if a power company gets to the point where it shuts a plant to do that, and data will certainly help to drive that company and others as far as their bottom line is concerned, how long it will take, how much it's going to cost, because it is actually stopping and tearing down one type of operation and building up a new type of operation. That takes that takes money, that takes time. So that kind of data is very, very important. And then when you look at the bigger picture, it gives us an idea of Florida Power Company. It's a company which is this size. It took them this long. So how long will it take a bigger company? How long will it take a smaller company? Comparisons like those can be made, and data like that can be collected to help to drive the process forward,
I agree with you, but when you're at the front end, and you focus on seeing, look, let this happen, because you understand that right now, this whole idea of a 2 degrees centigrade increase in temperature, is going to blow past that. It might be 3.8, or it could be, that type of thing. So it's how quickly can I move? There's one two car companies announced recently. I don't want to say exactly which ones they are because I'm not sure. But what they've decided to do is to skip over the whole idea of using hybrid vehicles and go straight to electrics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because technically
the technology has evolved enough now for people to go electric.
Right. So and you know, because like for example, I was passing by a garage recently and sorry, a parking lot, and all over the parking lot was solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here as you drive down the street, you'll see solar panels on the lamp posts,
mm-hmm.
and they're connected straight back into the grid.
Right.
You know, some people are saying that it looks ugly, but down the low, you know, what do you want? You know, climatic disaster or having to see a 3x5 panel sticking out from a lamppost. So you know.
Yeah, and I mean,
you decide.
There, how many people walk like this?
You know. No, but you know, so you know, those are the possibilities that you've seen coming up, and the technology is always evolving. So, for example, because even something like lithium, you know, you have to mine the lithium, you know, and
I see Margaret has put a note here. Margaret says wind also has a waste problem, namely the blades, not easily recycled and is posing a problem. And John Nozinek says, Margaret Francis, and noisy. So between these two posts, they are saying that the wind option, it's noisy and there is a waste problem with the blades.
Yeah, there is a waste problem with the blades. But you know, these things, we are just at the onset of this technology, right? These things will work. I am confident that it will work itself out. Mm-hmm. You know, you hear people, they're concerned about the twirling sound. Well, good Lord. I mean, you worry about a twirling sound over what? Disaster, climactic disaster. I mean, come on, you know, this world isn't a perfect world. And, you know, people have to get their heads out and start saying, well, you know, what can we really do? You know, so, I mean, look, there was something in the New York Times saying it's killing the bats. I mean, I don't know. There's one now, I think GE or Siemens or one of them have a slow one that's turning very slowly so you wouldn't get the noise. But the fact of the matter is that the technology is adjusting to all of these issues. You know, even the solar panels, after 18, 20 years, you have to get rid of them. And it's how do you process it? So, you know, there may be new chemical processing standards that you can use to get rid of these things. I mean, you know, there are people in labs working on these things day to day, trying to get it done. It's not something that hasn't been recognized by the industry. They know it's a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, those issues you have raised, among others, are reasons I say that the switch over to renewables, it's not going to happen quickly. Because let's face it, this is something which has been in the making maybe the past 20 years. And even now, the world has not been able to embrace renewable energy as the primary source to fuel what we do on a day-to-day basis. And it's because of these issues that can only be solved in real time. You see, and Margaret says, I beg to disagree. Noise is as much a health hazard as polluted air. And John says, generators have been around a long time. Windmills were even in Grenada. Yes, I know. I went to a restaurant in St. David long ago, and it was partly powered by windmills.
The unfortunate thing about it is those who may be against it, what solutions do they have to fix the situation? You could stand on the sidelines and throw rocks and such. But, look, it's a step forward. Everyone, folks who know, that's why in Europe, they're doing a lot of offshore wind farms. So that, you don't get the whirling song, that people complain about. But, I stood under a windmill in Toronto, and to be honest with you, a wind turbine, sorry, and there wasn't really a song that was annoying or anything like that. So it's all well and good but you ask these people, have you been to a wind farm or anything like that? And I would let you think of what the answer would be, but I don't.
I wouldn't say it's a matter of being against when issues like these are raised. Or raising the issue doesn't mean you disagree with the idea of.
No, I didn't say that, I didn't say that.
No, man.
What I'm saying is that this is not something new. This is something that's been out there. This is in all the newspapers, all the reading, everything like that. It's not something new. But it's something that people are trying to address. There are tons of people out there trying to address it. Siemens now have a gearless wind turbine. As you were saying, how could we address this thing? GE has a wind turbine that's putting out 12 megawatts. The thing is huge, but that's something you put offshore. So imagine if you stick 2 or 3 of those off some island or something like that, that's all you need.
Right, and Margaret comes back and says, well, Margaret is along the line of where I was going. That I don't think that anyone said they were against it, but an objective assessment requires acknowledgement of all the positives and negatives. Education requires that.
Bev.
And and I agree with that statement, Margaret, because we have to look at moving from fossil fuel. What are some of the things why fossil fuel was not sustainable for us as humans, was not sustainable for the planet? Why couldn't we continue with fossil fuel into infinitum? And if we have to change, and this is going to adopt, then with our knowledge and experience, it will be necessary to look at how these things are going to be dealt with, which is why I said that it will not happen quickly because some things can only be proven in real time. So we have to work through the problems, look for better solutions.
Yeah.
Just because something works, it doesn't mean that's the best way it can work. So
and Bev, look at the advancement of the technology. As I said, you're now up to companies putting out a 12 megawatt turbine. That's real power. So everything is evolving. They've even gone to gearless, which further reduces the noise. It's like the old days in the telephone companies. When you walked into a telephone company and you listened to an old electromechanical switch, the amount of rattling that was going on, you would be shocked as to know when you move into the new environment where it's routers and switches and that type of thing. Or even when we move to the electronic environment, where you had just electronic switches, everything was quiet. So there's a whole idea. The whole idea is the evolution of technology. It does not stand still. And we're in the, well, I don't want to say embryonic stages for wind because, as you said, the Dutch had windmills back to 300 years. So But the whole idea of this now is something that you have serious folks who are looking at these things in labs and such, and exploring all of these issues which are constantly being raised in journals and such. There are folks out there who are looking at these things and looking for solutions. So I hear the whole idea of the various voices and such. Fine, I don't have a problem with that. But also we also have on the other side of it the mere fact that scientists are now saying that the increased melting of the ice cap and polar caps is just astounding, because there's a glacier in Italy that they expect to go at any point in time, and they did not forecast that to happen. But that's where we find ourselves. As I said, we were saying 2 degrees by, I forget the exact year. We're going to blow past that.
Oh, we are not on track to meet. We're there, you see, so. And it all comes back to the almighty dollar. The major pollutants are the people who are earning money from what they do, and they are not going to stop just because the planet is dying.
Bev, I just told you the major polluters were the power companies, right? And what I'm saying to you is that these guys are now recognizing, hey, look, running a coal plant is not going to help me anymore. I could do it cheaper in an electrical plant or wind turbine plant. These guys are not interested. They may not, let's put it this way, they may not be interested in coal or alternatives, but they're interested in what is the cheapest way could I deliver my good and get paid for it? How do I increase my profit margins? So those same guys who you call them the polluters, they're now saying, hey, there's another alternative. And they're heading to make a profit.
I wasn't referring to the power companies, Richie.
All right.
Power companies at all, because the power companies have clients. And if the power companies do not have clients for the renewable energy, they will continue to sell fossil fuel.
Could you repeat that? Could you repeat that, please?
I said, when I talk about the major pollutants, in this instance, I was not referring to the power.
Yeah, I understand that part. There's a second part I'll try to get.
The power companies, they have clients. They have people who buy power. You have large factories. You have factories that produce guns and ammunition, factories that produce clothes, factories that produce everything which is consumed across the globe. These factories buy power. And if they are buying fossil power, that is what the power companies are going to provide. Now, it gets to the point that the power companies can convince these factories to change over their operations.
No. Bev, stop.
Solar.
Bev, Bev, hold one second.
But you can't stop.
No, but hold 1 second. Hold 1 second.
Let me finish.
At the end of the day, the power good that's delivered, the guy who's making the gun down the street or the guy who's sewing clothes or whatever, he doesn't see what type of power it is, All he knows is that he's getting power. That's all he's concerned about.
Yes, but his operation is set up to use fossil fuel. If he is going to change, but Richie, this is your field. You cannot just switch over from fossil to solar without making some adjustment in your home.
Bev.
Or in your factory, or in wherever.
Bev, listen to me. If you right now line your whole house in Grenada. I know you're up in Jamaica. Let's say you have a mansion in Grenada. You would not use all of the power that if you lined your entire house with solar panels. That power that your house is producing goes onto the grid. The grid does not see fossil fuel power or alternative power. All it sees is power. And what I'm trying to tell you is that once the power is generated, it's generated as power, kilowatts. It's not fossil kilowatts. It's not alternative kilowatts. It's plain old kilowatts. That's what drives your house. So that's why you see on your electric bill something called kilowatt hours, right? That is what you pay. And it's how much per kilowatt hour you're paying for. Now, per kilowatt hour, the kilowatt can come from any source. It could come from nuclear, it can come from coal, it could come from alternatives. It could come from wave technology in the sea. It could come from temperature differentials from the oceans. It could come from geothermal. You would never see what type of power you are getting. And that's why I told you, here in New Jersey, there are solar panels lining the highway, and that goes directly into the grid. The grid does not see that it's solar power. It sees that it's kWs coming to it, kilowatts. That's what it sees. And you do not want to misinform people to tell them that there's power from a power plant, which is different from power from an alternative plant. It all comes down to kilowatts, watts. Okay? Watts, voltage, and current. All right? That's what drives the system. So that's what I was trying. That's why when you said it, I was a bit confused as to what I was hearing. But let's be correct. All a plant sees is kilowatts, this wattage. It sees the wattage.
Okay, so based on what you are saying, if all the power companies decide to switch and go solar, that's the end of fossil.
That's the end of fossil.
Okay, all right, so we will...
Some guys actually, there was an argument involving Cory Booker, who's a senator here from New Jersey, when he was talking about using nuclear power. Because, a nuclear plant just sits down there and keeps grinding out. But the problem with a nuclear plant is that something can go wrong. And if something goes wrong, you have another Chernobyl or the one in Japan or something like that. So you don't want the nuclear power plant around. But at the end of the day, even the nuclear power plant, all it gives you is wattage, kilowatts. And on your bill, when you go back from GRENADAB, you'll see how many kilowatt hours you used, and you'll see the price of the kilowatt hours. All right?
Okay. Well, we will leave that there because we know there are other elements involved into the switch over from fossil fuel to renewables. There are other elements involved, not just on the technical side, on the business side, which is the side I was alluding to. But we will leave that there for another discussion because we are almost out of time. And I doubt we would have enough time to delve into a lot of those other issues which impact on it. Because if renewable energy was something which could be easily grasped and used and substituted fossil fuel, then the question is, why hasn't it been more prominent? Why?
Have you seen what is going on in China and India? as far as solar and wind are concerned.
Well, I can't say that I've seen.
Okay.
You know, I can't say I've seen it.
The main issue is right now is the whole idea of the switchover. You know, it's like, think of your phone. A few years ago, you were using a 2G phone. You're now using a 4G telephone.
I understand.
And so there's a switchover. So it's, I mean, these are investments companies are making. And you look at China, just yesterday, they were showing how China is using solar panels and such. I mean, you know, extensive usage, extensive.
But on the technical side, Richard, that's what I'm saying. On the technical side, you have gone into depth and lengths to explain on the technical side, and that is fine. But that's not the only issue.
No, but what is the issue you're having a problem with? That's what I'm trying to understand.
I didn't tell you I'm having any problem.
Or what is the issue you were trying to raise?
You see, the issue, well...
I mean, I know we're running out of time, but still.
Yes, and that is why I pause, because the issue that I am raising, which I would have loved for us to have spent some time on, was the business aspect of it, the acceptable aspect of it, the social aspect of it, the other things which feed into making renewables as easily acceptable as fossil fuel is, because we live in a generation that grew up with fossil fuel, with renewables always on the fringes. And even now, renewables have not made that major inroad into becoming the choice of fuel, even with all the issues with climate change, even with all the issues with natural disasters and you know, the carbon footprint and all the other issues that have been associated with the use of fossil fuel. We are still fossil fuel people, for want of a better terminology or phraseology for it at this time. So when we look at it, it's not just from a technical perspective. There are other issues involved. What are these issues? Why have renewables not come further and farther in this 21st century when we should be running to embrace the alternatives and get rid of fossils because of all the connective problems that fossil fuel has shown over the years? So here we are today. Any comments, George, that we pay attention to?
Boy, there were a lot, but I think they're so long ago, they're not going to make any sense being read at this point in time. So you guys just go ahead. We only have about 2 minutes left, or a little bit less than that.
Yeah. Right. So we could take a little final comment from everyone. Catherine, what say you, girl, over there?
I'm fine. I'm nothing to say at the moment.
Okay. Richie, any final comment?
No, I would continue to say that we at this moment we do not find ourselves in a revolutionary state as far as energy is concerned, but it's evolutionary. And I mean, in countries as China and India, they've made a full commitment to jump into this thing, as quickly as possible. There are challenges, but at least if we could get a reduction in the fossil fuel sector, that is something we need to embrace and embrace quickly. So, you know, because as I said, we're blowing by the numbers, and trust me, people are embracing the whole idea of using alternatives. Of course, you know, it's where you, if you live in a city, how much can you embrace it? But if you're living in open spaces, yeah, you see houses, more and more houses, you see in solar panels on them.
Right. All right, well, folks, we spent most of the evening looking at the climate and climate change and natural disasters and managing natural disasters and managing people even within the context of when a natural hazard comes ashore, whether it be, we spoke mostly of hurricanes tonight, but it doesn't have to be a hurricane, it could be anything else. So as we depart here from Mek We Chat, thank you all for sharing this past couple of hours with us. We look forward to having your company again next week, Thursday. And I tell you something, wherever you are, be safe, take care, have a wonderful weekend. God bless.
And Bev, before we go, I just wanted to show you my 2 citrus trees. indoors in New Jersey.
Indoor citrus.
Come springtime, they go back outside.
Oh, that's great. Nice. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.